Let's talk about one of the most interesting and disturbing individuals in human history, Terrare, the man who could eat anything. Terrare was a Frenchman born around the year 1772 in the city of Lyon. From a young age, he developed an unusually large appetite, and as a result of this, his parents couldn't afford to provide for him, and as a young teen, he was kicked out of his house and told to fend for himself. As he grew older, his appetite grew with him and he began to resort to eating grotesque things like live animals, whole cats, dogs, and even barrels full of corks. As a way to make some money, Terrare began to work as a street performer, eating whatever people would give to him. However, even this was not enough to satisfy his appetite, and he would often resort to digging through the trash in order to find extra scraps of food on his off time. After the War of First Galatians broke out, Terrare enlisted in the military and began to work as a spy. He would swallow important documents, carry them across enemy lines, and then deliver them to officials on the other side. However, having no other qualifications, this didn't last very long, and he was eventually put into a military hospital due to his condition. During his stay at the Institute, they would perform a series of bizarre experiments in an attempt to cure him of his appetite. However, nothing worked, and after he was caught drinking the blood of other patients and accused of eating a toddler, they expelled him from the hospital. Just 4 short years later, Terrare caught a case of severe tuberculosis and died a rather gruesome death, which I will not discuss here. Comment what the weirdest thing you've ever eaten is, and follow for more.
Disturbing facts that will ruin your day, Part 14. This is the effect that sunscreen has when viewed through an ultraviolet camera. Coco the gorilla knew sign language, and when asked where gorillas go when they die, he answered, "Comfortable hole by." You may be living in the last year of your life without being aware of it. Future biotechnology could be used to make prisoners feel as they were serving a 1,000-year sentence in a matter of 8 hours.
So some people believe that there's a portal to another dimension in Washington. In 1997, a man by the name of Mel Waters called into the Coast to Coast radio show claiming that he had a hole in his backyard that was 80,000 feet deep. And supernatural things were starting to happen. For context, the deepest mine shaft in the world is only 13,000 feet deep, and 80,000 feet is 15 miles deep. Mel claimed that during the day, a black beam like this one would shoot out of the hole into the sky. He also said that a neighbor dumped his dead dog's body into the hole, and the next day, the dog was outside alive. This is where it gets kind of weird though. So Mel's property was right next to the Yakima Training Center, which is a military base. And shortly after that first phone call, Mel claimed that the government tried to silence him and pay him out so he would never talk about this hole ever again. And then later, a satellite photo was taken of where Mel's property supposedly was, but it was completely blotted out with this big white square. Though it's been long searched for, no one's been able to find the actual location of this hole. But many people in Washington are convinced it exists and have dedicated lots of time and energy to finding it. This is actually a clip from the phone call.
I've got Mel on the line. Mel's the guy with the never-ending hole. Right now I'm in a little town called Ellensburg. Oh, I know Ellensburg. Oh, you really think you've got 80,000?
Yes. Yeah, I get line in 5,000 yard spools. I've gone through that many. As usual, I brought the dogs with me. They wouldn't go anywhere near the damn thing, and if I try to bring them there on a leash, they'll just dig their feet in. They do not want to go anywhere near the hole.
So what do you think? Follow along for more.
This YouTuber disappeared without leaving a trace. YouTuber Kate Yup began posting her mukbang videos on YouTube in 2018, achieving great success. While blindfolded, she can be seen in her videos eating aggressively without caring for aesthetics. Then, in November of 2019, Kate posted a video where her teeth began to fall out, seemingly rotted through, and since then, no one knows where she's gone. Someone theorized that she could be in real danger, as a bunch of users spotted several creepy coded messages in her videos. A hidden SOS request, 4 letters capitalized to spell help, and a Morse code message tapped on a glass bowl that said, "Please help me."
Scary facts you wish you never knew. Don't try to look at yourself in the mirror at the middle of the night because From 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. your reflection isn't actually you.
While we're on the subject of time travelers, let's talk about Eleanor Jourdain and Charlotte Mobley. In 1901, Charlotte and Eleanor claimed to have experienced a time slip while out for a walk in the gardens of Versailles. During a regular stroll in the gardens, the women had found themselves in an unknown area. They had crossed a rustic bridge to get there and passed a plow that they had never seen before. Not only was this area new, but the women claimed nothing in the environment seemed familiar. There was like a dark cloud that felt like it was sinking over them, and there were people in weird clothing, and a band was playing music that they had never heard before. After this walk, the women were never able to find this part of the garden again, and actually this part of the garden may not have had existed in hundreds of years. See, when they asked where the plow was, a groundskeeper told them that the plow had not been there since the French Revolution, when Louis XVI had sold it. And as for the old bridge they passed, that hadn't been there in over 100 years. See, that bridge was used by Marie Antoinette in the late 1700s. It had been demolished decades ago. One of the strangest parts of this story was that Charlotte actually saw a woman in the garden that day and was never able to identify who it was until a year later when she saw this portrait of Marie Antoinette. See, most portraits of Marie Antoinette show her with a much slimmer nose and a longer face, but one of Marie Antoinette's closest confidants actually said that this portrait was the one that looked the most like Marie. The two women published their story, and skeptics immediately came up with a bunch of reasons as to why this was untrue. From maybe there was a reenactment happening that day that the two women stumbled upon, to maybe they were hallucinating because of their lesbian tendencies. So yeah, obviously this one does seem like very hard to believe, but the idea of time slips are really interesting, and there actually might be something to them. What do you think?
Where'd you get those creepers? Oh, those weepers. How they hypnotize. Yeah. Where'd you get those eyes?
Terrifying cursed games you should never play, Part 2. The Man in the Fields game. If you win this game, you will be granted physical and financial protection for an entire year. But if you lose, the consequences could be dire. To begin this game, you must summon the man in the fields. To do this, you'll need to go into your backyard with a lantern and ask 7 times, but who will scare the crows away? If you hear nothing after the 7th time, then the summoning has failed and the game is over. But if you hear a voice in your head saying, that's not your biggest problem, the game has begun. At this point, the first thing you'll need to do is go into your house and find a room with only one door. You'll need to close everything in it that can be closed. This includes drawers, bags, etc. This will be your safe room. Once you leave this room, you will find that everything that can be opened in your house will be open, and your job is to close all these items again before the clock strikes 12. If you see a shadowy man in your peripheral vision, ignore him. He's not the one you should be worried about. However, if you look at the backyard at all, even accidentally, you'll need to return to your safe room immediately and remain there until 6 a.m. Otherwise, you'll be caught by the man in the fields. Finally, once you have closed everything else in the house, close your eyes and keep them closed until 6 a.m. This will end the game. Comment whether or not you would play this game, and follow for more.
Scary facts you didn't know about. People who stay up late and get up late are more likely to become psychopaths. Wherever you are, someone has died in that same exact spot. Most laughs on TV are from the 50s, which means you're hearing dead people.
Things, part 36. A woman by the name of Belle Guinness would lure men to her farm and ask them to marry her, which most did. When they did, she would take out a life insurance policy on them, have kids with the men, take out life insurance policies on them, and then they would all die in a mysterious accident. Eventually, insurance policies caught up to this and realized that most of them died from strychnine poisoning. By the time she was caught, she had killed almost 40 people. The ways she found to lure people to her home were very creative. Some of them she lured by posting an ad, some by promising a place to live, work, etc. She eventually died in a house fire, but most people believe that she probably faked her death and escaped.
Here's some stuff you probably didn't know about The Wizard of Oz. The movie is the cause of Judy Garland's death. Since Dorothy was supposed to be a prepubescent girl, the studio execs forced Garland to wear a tight corset around her waist. She was also prescribed amphetamines to keep her weight down. She became addicted to these drugs and started using them recreationally for the rest of her life, and eventually they killed her. While filming a scene with Dorothy and the lion, Judy couldn't stop giggling. After several ruined takes, the director slapped her across the face, and the next time she attempted the scene, she did it perfectly. It is also rumored she was molested by the Munchkins, saying they would make her life miserable on set because they would put their hands up her dress. Keep in mind, these men were also 40 or more years old. The Wicked Witch of the West actually suffered a 2nd-degree burn on her face and a 3rd-degree burn on her hand while filming her character's fiery exit, like for part 2.
Videos that seem innocent but have a terrifying backstory, part 4. This video shows comic magician Tommy Cooper having a heart attack on live TV. His audience, along with the assistant, thought it was all part of the show, so they laughed along while he died on stage. This video shows a Russian influencer's birthday party where she decided to throw dry ice into her swimming pool for the visual effect. Sadly, 3 people died due to carbon dioxide poisoning. The following video is what happens when you take 2 AI clever bots and hook them up to one another to have a conversation. It's funny at first, but it soon becomes quite disturbing.
Hi.
How are you?
Great. You?
I'm okay.
That's good.
Are you good?
Do you believe in God?
Yes, I do.
So you're Christian?
No, I am not.
But you say you are not helpful, therefore you're a meaning.
How you say idiot?
That does not make sense.
Don't you want to have a body?
Hey, have you seen this? Back a couple years ago, if you went on Google Maps, a photograph of this thing was seen on a balcony of someone's home. People were so confused by this and immediately assumed it was a monster or a ghost, judging by the big white eyes and creepy figure. Some other people went as far as to even assume that this might be a demon. This became a big deal that Google even went in and blurred out the figure. What do you think it was?
Blood-curdling facts that you wish you never knew, part 11. And make sure to watch till the end of the video because the last fact will be from this game called I Wish I Didn't Know. Right now, in your bed are between 100,000 to 10 million dust mites. And if this isn't bad enough, they feast on skin flakes. An octopus is so flexible that it's capable of entering through your mouth, traveling through your digestive tract, and coming out through your asshole. There are over 200 dead bodies on Mount Everest, and they're used as checkpoints by climbers. If you die inside of your house, it's very common that your pet is going to want to eat you. You wouldn't do that, would you? Neil Armstrong's footprints on the moon don't match up with the ones on his astronaut suit. And the craziest one, the natural vanilla, strawberry, and raspberry flavoring actually comes from a beaver's anal gland. Jesus Christ.
Creepiest true crime stories, part something, I don't know which one it is. Gilbert Paul Jordan, also known as the Boozing Barber, used alcohol as his murder weapon. He picked his victims out at bars, mostly indigenous women. He would buy them drinks and encourage them to drink and drink and drink until they passed out. He would then continue to pour more alcohol down their throats. A blood alcohol content of 0.2 would cause them to pass out. Yet many of his victims were found with a blood alcohol content of 0.79. Police investigated him and found that he attempted this 200 times a year for 8 years. They also intervened on 4 different occasions to prevent those women from becoming victims. Jordan was arrested while he was poisoning his last victim, pouring alcohol down her throat as she lay unconscious. Even though he was suspected for 10 murders, he only got 1 charge of manslaughter. He was sentenced to 15 years and only served 6.
What's wrong with me? Why do I feel?
Here's why you should never go to this town in Italy. This is one of the most cursed towns in the world, and apparently you're not even supposed to say its name out loud, so here it is. This town puts a curse on anybody who visits it. Many people who have just tried to enter the town have gotten in mysterious and unexplained car crashes. It's also common for babies to be born in this town with an extra heart or an extra lung. And freak accidents that are completely unexplained happen there all the time, but only to the tourists. It's so bad that police won't even pull you over for speeding if they think that you're a tourist because they don't want to be associated with you. So yeah, let's all agree to never go there.
You've heard of Five Nights at Freddy's, but have you heard about Bay Area's haunted Chuck E. Cheese? This particular Chuck E. Cheese used to be a toy store. Supposedly, a little girl had fallen from a 3rd-story window while it was still a toy store. Years later, and the store is now known as Chuck E. Cheese, you can even see Chuck himself in the window. There are many claims of people seeing the little girl's face on the 3rd story and in the parking lot. There's also a tale of a little boy who fell down the stairs while looking for his mother. People now say that they can hear the mother's cries in the stairwell. It's actually really creepy. I don't know about you guys, but I think that Five Nights at Freddy's has nothing on this one.
So I came across this article recently, and I can't stop thinking about it. We have over 300,000 tons of nuclear waste that will be radioactive for the next 100,000 years at least. We already have plans for how it can be stored for that long, but how do you communicate how dangerous it is to people who might come across it in 90,000 years? Let's walk through it. Why don't we write it down? Our language will not last that long. Okay, so how about a symbol? Symbols lose meaning too. If you've never seen this before, you might think it's a depiction of an angel. A comic strip. That kind of makes more sense. It tells you that this material is very harmful to you. But not every culture reads top to bottom. If you read this from bottom to top, you might think that material is medicine. There are panels of global experts working on how to communicate the message. So far, they've figured out what messages they need to send without letters and symbols. And it's like something straight out of a sci-fi movie. I'm gonna put the messages up, pause the video, read it, and then go to my part 2, where I talk about what kind of solutions they already have. If you haven't already seen it, go watch my part 1 to this video because it's really important. I talked about how hard it would be to communicate the danger of nuclear waste to people who are dealing with it 90,000 years in the future. These are the messages that need to be communicated without language or symbols. And there's no easy answer because human beings are instinctively curious. I mean, we've wrecked everything because of it. Experts think the best way to communicate the danger of this nuclear waste is through changing the landscape, like a giant field of thorns like 20-foot-long spikes, or this wasteland of forbidding blocks. It gives the impression that the land is uninhabitable. Since the nuclear waste will be stored deep into the ground, experts think that these storage facilities should have these facial expressions engraved into them. Facial expressions that clearly depict negative emotions. But unfortunately, there's just no way to stop people from ignoring these signs in the distant future. Some people think that we should just not leave any trace of it. But I'm curious to know what you think, so let me know in the comments.
Today I'm going to tell you guys a couple of creepy facts. There's approximately a 40% chance that you could get away with murder in the US. 20% of children report hearing voices or seeing some sort of imaginary friend. 1 in 100 people are psychopaths. If you live in a major city, there's a high chance that you've walked past a home with someone trapped inside it. Most laugh tracks that you hear on TV were recorded back in the 1950s, which means you're most likely hearing the laughter of people who've already died. When the Pirates of the Caribbean ride was first created in Disneyland, they used real human skeletons, but they've since been removed. Scaphism is a form of torture that people used to do back in the day, where they would cover the victims in honey and expose them to large amounts of ants or insects.
Here's another one of the most interesting and terrifying SCPs in existence. And as usual, I'm giving a shout out in the description of the next video, so press share, copy link, and comment what SCP I should do next, or just a random number. Today we're going to be discussing SCP-990, or the Dream Man. SCP-990 generally takes the appearance of a middle-aged man dressed in a Cold War-era business suit that appears exclusively in Foundation personnel's dreams. It is currently unknown if he exists somewhere in the real world as well. SCP-990 will often give detailed accounts to Foundation agents and researchers about tragedies that will come about and how they will occur. Through information provided by him, the Foundation was able to prevent a nuclear holocaust. However, not all of the events that he has described were avoidable. Perhaps his most terrifying prophecy, though,